The United States government has announced a decision that is drawing global attention and could have significant international implications. American authorities revealed that they have chosen to classify two of Brazil's major criminal organizations, PCC and Comando Vermelho, as foreign terrorist organizations. This is the Fatos Entre Mundos channel. It's a pleasure to have you here. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss videos like this, and support our work by leaving a like. It really helps the channel grow. This measure was defined by the U.S. Department of State, the agency responsible for the country's foreign policy, and has already been officially announced, reinforcing the nation's stance against groups considered highly dangerous. According to the official statement, the decision does not involve just a single classification, but rather two distinct categories, each carrying specific consequences. The first places PCC and Comando Vermelho on the list of specially designated global terrorists. This designation takes effect immediately, expanding the range of actions that can be taken against these organizations. In addition, there is a second classification that labels these groups as foreign terrorist organizations. In this case, the measure has a set effective date. According to the State Department, it will come into force on June 5th. In practical terms, this means that the United States will no longer treat these factions solely as criminal groups, but as threats with characteristics associated with terrorism, a shift that could significantly change how actions against them are carried out. The announcement was made public by U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the country's top diplomatic authority and a central figure in shaping American foreign policy decisions. In a statement shared on social media, Rubio emphasized the seriousness of the situation. According to him, Primeiro Comando da Capital, PCC, and Comando Vermelho rank among the most dangerous criminal organizations currently operating in Brazil. He also highlighted that these groups are not confined to Brazilian territory, expanding their activities across Latin America and, in some cases, reaching into the United States. Given this scenario, Rubio stated that the U.S. government has decided to take a tougher stance. From now on, these organizations will be officially recognized as terrorist groups, both under the category of foreign terrorist organizations and on the list of specially designated global terrorists. According to the Secretary, this shift allows for a broader range of enforcement tools. He explained that the administration led by Donald Trump intends to use every available resource to counter these organizations, including freezing financial assets, cutting off all forms of support, and dismantling the networks that sustain their operations. The statement released by the State Department reinforces that the designation as global terrorists is already in effect, meaning immediate measures can be taken. Meanwhile, the classification as foreign terrorist organizations has a defined start date: June 5th. In addition, the document draws attention to the scale of these groups. Combined, they involve thousands of members and are believed to be responsible for coordinating violent actions, including attacks against police officers, public officials, and civilians across multiple regions of Brazil. This history of violence, combined with their growing international reach, played a key role in the United States' decision to apply this new classification. The decision announced by the U.S. Department of State reinforces what the Trump administration describes as an increasingly firm stance against cartels and criminal organizations operating both within and beyond American borders. The measure is also presented as part of a broader effort to ensure public safety and protect the country's strategic interests. Under U.S. law, the designation of specially designated global terrorists carries a wide-reaching scope. It does not apply solely to the direct members of these organizations, but also extends to any individuals, companies, or entities that may be involved with, finance, or provide logistical support to these groups. In practical terms, this significantly expands the reach of authorities. allowing them to target not only the core members of these factions, but also the broader networks that enable their operations. For this reason, this category is considered more comprehensive and more stringent than the classification of foreign terrorist organizations. The announcement came within a notable political context. It was made just one day after a meeting between Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Senator Flavio Bolsonaro, who is a presidential pre-candidate from the Liberal Party. In addition, the senator had also met with Donald Trump at the White House earlier that same week. During these meetings, Flavio Bolsonaro reportedly advocated for Brazilian criminal factions to be officially classified as terrorist organizations, reinforcing calls for a tougher U.S. approach in dealing with these groups. Taken together, these meetings and statements suggest that the decision did not occur in isolation, but rather as part of a broader political and diplomatic landscape, involving the interests and positions of multiple leaders. Meanwhile, the Brazilian government, Lula, has taken a different stance and expressed concern over this classification. Officials argue that labeling criminal factions as terrorist organizations could lead to consequences that go beyond fighting crime, potentially opening the door to external actions and increasing international pressure on the country. Among the main concerns is the possibility of foreign intervention, as well as the risk of economic sanctions and direct impacts on national sovereignty. This issue has been repeatedly emphasized by members of the Brazilian government, who maintain that the problem should be addressed domestically, through Brazil's own laws and institutions. President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva also recently visited the White House, where he met with U.S. authorities. On that occasion, he stated that this specific issue was not directly discussed during the meeting. Even so, he reaffirmed Brazil's interest in expanding international cooperation in the field of security, particularly in combating organized crime. According to the president, one of the ideas raised was the creation of a joint task force involving countries across the Americas. The goal would be to unite efforts, share intelligence, and develop coordinated strategies to confront criminal organizations that operate across borders. On the other hand, the United States' decision to classify these groups as terrorist organizations is not an isolated move. It is part of a broader strategy that the country has applied in different regions of the world. Similar approaches have previously been used against cartels in countries such as Mexico and Venezuela, as part of efforts to combat international drug trafficking and the expansion of these networks. This background shows that the measure follows an established pattern in U.S. policy. At the same time, it continues to generate debate and disagreement, especially when it involves sensitive issues such as national sovereignty and international intervention. In practical terms, this type of classification can serve as a legal foundation for more aggressive actions. In previous situations, the U.S. government has used similar designations to justify operations in regions such as the Caribbean, and even interventions in foreign territories. Once a group is labeled as a terrorist organization, the United States significantly expands its scope of action. This allows for the acceleration of military and intelligence measures, which, under certain circumstances, may extend beyond the sovereignty limits of other nations. Additionally, because these actions fall under the framework of counterterrorism, the process required to authorize them often faces fewer legal and political obstacles. This stands in contrast to how authorities typically handle organizations classified as conventional criminal groups, where stricter limitations and procedures usually apply.